Strange, isn't it? Someone can spend their whole life working and still not realize their health is fading. You wake up. You make the same coffee. You brush past the mirror, and you don't look too long. There's a heaviness in your step, but you say it's age. Or stress, or maybe sleep, but there's something else. Something quieter. Like a whisper in the background you've learned to ignore. And that's the problem. You see, most people think strokes happen suddenly. A dramatic collapse. Slurred speech. A twisted face. And yes, sometimes they do, but the body doesn't always scream. Sometimes it only sighs. There are signs weeks before, but they're easy to miss because they don't shout. They drift in like fog over a quiet road. Let me ask you this. Have you ever stood up and the room tilted just a little? Or struggled to find a word you knew a second ago? Or felt your arm strangely numb, like it belonged to someone else? You probably brushed it off. We all do that because life doesn't leave space for softness, for listening, for pausing when your body says something's off. But here's the truth I've come to see. Health doesn't vanish all at once. It wears down quietly. Like water over stone. Like a clock that's off by a second each day. Until suddenly, it's ringing. At the wrong time, and you're late for everything that mattered. The early signs of a stroke aren't loud. They're subtle, slippery, a moment of confusion. A flicker of dizziness. A feeling you're just not yourself today. And when you tell someone, they say, "You're probably just tired. You need more sleep." Don't worry. You're fine, but you're not fine, and deep down, you feel it. Now, I'm not here to scare you. That's not how healing begins. But I've sat across too many hospital beds, watching people wish they had noticed sooner. Not because they were careless, but because no one ever told them that the body can whisper long before it breaks. So this is me telling you now. Not with fear, but with care, because your body is always speaking. And it's time we started listening, before the silence becomes too loud. It starts so small. You're pouring tea, and for a moment, you forget where you set the cup. Or you call your daughter by your niece's name and laugh it off like it's nothing. We all forget things, you tell yourself. And it's true, but some forgetfulness feels different. Not scattered, not distracted, just foreign. I once sat with a man who said, "It's like my thoughts had to walk through fog to reach me." He didn't notice it at first. He was still working, still driving, still smiling. But sometimes he'd stop mid-sentence and not remember where the sentence began. His scans later showed he'd had a small stroke weeks before. A silent one, they called it. Silent, but not harmless. And here's what no one tells you. Some strokes don't steal your voice or your balance right away. They just shift the ground under your feet. So slightly, you think it's you who's changed. Maybe you feel clumsier than usual. Maybe your vision blurs for a few seconds, then returns. You think it's screen time or bad sleep, so you adjust your chair. Drink water, move on. But what if that's your warning? What if that's your body tapping your shoulder, saying, "Please, slow down, look closer"? You see, stroke isn't always sudden. It can arrive like a thief in soft shoes, testing the windows night after night, waiting for the day you forget to lock the door. And the signs? They're scattered in your ordinary days, like tripping on a word you've said your whole life. Or not being able to write your grocery list the way you used to. Or struggling to open a jar, not from strength, but because your hand won't. Follow your thought. These things don't make headlines. They don't get dramatic music in commercials, but they are real. And they matter because the body doesn't lie. It remembers every meal, every breath, every skipped checkup, and every late night. It keeps score gently. Until one day, it can't be gentle anymore. I knew someone once, a quiet woman who loved crossword puzzles. Sharp as a tack, everyone said, until one day she couldn't finish the clues. She said the letters didn't look right. Her family thought it was stress. It WASN single quotes T. 2 weeks later, she couldn't move her right hand dot. It doesn't always hit all at once. Sometimes the body gives you rehearsal after rehearsal until the final act arrives, but there's grace in that. Because if you listen closely, you have time. It's strange, really, how something harmful can become so ordinary. You wake up late, you skip breakfast, you rush through traffic with a tight chest and an empty stomach. That's just life, right? You eat whatever's easy. You tell yourself it's just for today, but today becomes tomorrow, and then the month is gone. No sirens, no alarms, just a quiet wear and tear on the inside. And that's the danger, because stroke doesn't always come from one moment. It comes from 1,000 small ones, each one harmless on its own, but together they add up. Like salt, you don't taste it anymore. It's in your soup, your bread, your snacks. It creeps in, unnoticed, tightening your blood vessels day after day until one morning they don't flex the way they used to, and pressure builds. Not the kind you feel in your shoulders, the kind inside your arteries, the kind you don't feel until it's too late. I once knew a man, sturdy fellow, always smiling, never missed work. He ate like his father did, salty fish, pickled vegetables, processed meats. He said, "I've eaten this way my whole life." And he had, until the morning half his face wouldn't move. He didn't blame the food. He blamed bad luck. But it wasn't luck. It was the slow buildup of every small choice. Now, I'm not saying one meal will break you, or that you should live in fear of everything on your plate. But there's a difference between living and drifting. And many people, good people, are drifting, not because they're lazy, but because no one ever told them that normal isn't always harmless. That skipping water, cutting sleep, pushing through pain can feel brave, but often it's just quiet damage wrapped in routine. You don't notice the wear until something cracks, and when it does, when the body finally says enough, people look back and say, "I thought I was fine." But fine isn't the same as well. And wellness starts with noticing how you feel when you wake, noticing what you eat without thinking, noticing when your thoughts feel slower than they used to. It's not about control. It's about attention, because your body is always talking, and every habit you repeat is either healing you or wearing you down, grain by grain. Some things don't need to be loud to be true. Pain can be silent. Exhaustion can wear a smile, and illness can move like a shadow behind you, always there, but never quite in view. The body is clever like that. It wants you to keep going. It finds ways to cope, to adjust. You lose feeling in your fingers, and it teaches you to hold things differently. Your balance changes, and you start avoiding stairs without realizing it. That's what makes it so dangerous. The body doesn't always stop you. It adapts until it can't. I met a woman once. She worked 2 jobs, raised 3 kids. She told me she'd been having spells. That's the word she used. Just little spells, doctor. My hand forgets what it's holding. Sometimes my tongue goes heavy. But it passes. And then she'd smile like it wasn't worth mentioning. That's the thing. So many people think their symptoms aren't serious because they're not dramatic. Because they come and go. But symptoms that come and go are often the ones to watch. The closest dot because a mini-stroke, a TIA, can feel like a fluke, a passing glitch, but in truth, it's a flare in the forest. A signal fire. A warning. The brain doesn't forget that kind of thing. Even when you do, you might feel fine. Tomorrow. You might run errands, laugh with friends, convince yourself it was nothing. But the clock has already started ticking, and the next time, it might not be small. Still, people wait. They wait because they're busy, or proud, or afraid of hearing something they can't fix. I understand that, but silence is not safety. And strength isn't ignoring the signal, it's answering it. The body speaks, through your handwriting, through your posture, through the way your thoughts lose their edge and your movements lose their grace. You may think you're just aging. You may think it's normal, but I'll tell you something I've learned. There's a difference between aging and unraveling. And if you listen closely, you'll know which one you're living through. Not all pressure comes from salt. Some of it comes from silence, from the things you carry that no one sees, the deadlines, the debts, the way you smile for others while your mind runs ahead, always planning, always bracing. That's stress, but not the kind you feel in a moment. I'm talking about the slow kind, the one that settles in your chest like a stone you've learned to live with. You see, the body doesn't forget stress. It registers every tense morning, every skipped breath, every night you lay awake thinking about everything and nothing. Your blood pressure doesn't lie, neither do your arteries. They feel it every time your heart races for no reason. Every time your muscles tighten while you sit still. It adds up, quietly, day after day. Until something gives. People think strokes come from nowhere. But many begin in the mind, in the way we never let ourselves rest, in the way we carry tension like it's part of who we are. I once asked a patient when he last felt truly calm. He looked at me and said, maybe in my 20s. He was 60-2. He wasn't weak. He wasn't careless. He was just tired for too long. And that's the danger. You get used to it. You think it's normal to wake up already behind, to live on edge, to never feel safe enough to exhale fully, but your body knows better. Your nervous system was never meant to live in fight or flight. Not for weeks, not for decades. And the toll? It doesn't always show up as burnout. Sometimes it shows up as a blood vessel giving way. Stress narrows your vessels, thickens your blood, raises your pressure. Even while you sleep, you might not feel sick. But that doesn't mean you're well, because stroke isn't just about weakness in your limbs. It's about the storm inside you that's been brewing too long. So if you've been pushing through, if you've been surviving on caffeine and tension and silence, I want you to hear this. It's not sustainable. And more importantly, it's not necessary. There's nothing noble in collapsing quietly. There's strength in noticing, in softening, in stepping back before the line is crossed. Because your body isn't your enemy, it's your witness. And it's been whispering to you, through headaches, tight jaws, shallow sleep, trying to say, you don't have to live like this. It often begins with something small. So small you almost laugh it off. A fork slips from your hand. You try to button your shirt, and your fingers just don't cooperate. You tilt your head, wondering if you're just tired. Maybe you slept. Wrong. Maybe it's nothing, but maybe it's not. Because weakness, especially on one side of the body, is one of the quiet ways the brain waves a red flag. Not dramatic. Not painful. Just a faint misfire between your mind and your muscles. Left foot drags a little. The right hand doesn't grip like before. Your smile feels uneven in the mirror, but only for a second. And so you keep going. That's how strokes hide, not in chaos, but in the nearly normal. I once had a patient who noticed his left eyelid twitching. Then his left leg felt off, not paralyzed, just heavy. He thought it was sciatica. A pinched nerve, maybe too much sitting. 2 weeks later, he couldn't lift that leg at all. The brain doesn't fail all at once. Sometimes it flickers, testing the boundary between function and collapse. You might see double, just for a moment. You might feel a strange numbness in your lips or your fingertips. You might lose part of your vision, like someone pulled a curtain across the corner of your eye. And still, you'll tell yourself, it'll pass. Because we're taught to be strong, to downplay, to wait. But I'll tell you this, a stroke doesn't wait. And sometimes, the body is generous enough to give you a preview, not to scare you, to prepare you. Because when the vessel bursts, when the blood spills where it shouldn't, when oxygen no longer reaches the cells that keep you speaking, walking, remembering, that's when it's too late to wonder if you should have called earlier. But before that moment, there is a window. And that window is framed by signs, a dropped pen, a sudden stumble, a thought that won't come. I'm not saying every numb finger is a stroke. But I am saying this, when something feels different, wrong, off, don't talk yourself out of listening. You live in this body. You know its rhythm. And if that rhythm changes, pay attention. Because before the body breaks, it always whispers. Sometimes it's not the symptoms that delay the call. It's the silence around them. You feel your leg weaken. Your speech stumbles. A part of your vision fades for a moment. And still, you don't go. You don't tell anyone. Why? It's not because you're careless. It's because you're human. Because deep down, you hope it'll pass. Because part of you is afraid of what it might be. And part of you just doesn't want to cause trouble. I've seen it again and again. A man who drove himself to the hospital, even though he couldn't feel his left side. He said, I didn't want to scare my wife. A woman who waited 3 days after a mini-stroke, she said, it was the weekend. Didn't want to bother anyone. We carry this quiet pride, this belief that strength means silence, that asking for help is weakness, that rest is indulgence, that symptoms are something to push through. But here's the truth. No one likes to say out loud, your body doesn't care about your pride. It will break when it's had enough. And it won't ask for permission. So many people delay care, not because they don't know, but because they've spent a lifetime ignoring themselves. They take care of others. They show up for work. They hold everything together. But when their hand trembles, when their words slur, when their head fills with fog, they say, I'll wait. Just a few more hours. Just one more night. But time is the one thing. A stroke doesn't forgive. There's a phrase we use in medicine. Time is brain. For every minute a stroke is left untreated, the brain loses millions of neurons, memories, movement, words, and yet, people hesitate. Not because they want to die, but because they don't want to be inconvenient. That breaks my heart more than any diagnosis, because these are good people, strong people, People who've sacrificed their whole lives and still struggle to believe they're worth saving early. So, if you've ever felt that, if a small voice in you says, it's probably nothing, don't make a fuss. I want you to hear this clearly. You are not a burden. You are not being dramatic. And it is not better to wait. Your body is asking you for help. Your job is to listen, not with fear, but with compassion, the same compassion you'd give anyone else. Because courage is not in the waiting. It's in the reaching. Even when your voice shakes. Even when you're unsure. Especially then. The damage doesn't always come all at once. It creeps softly, like water beneath the floorboards. You don't see it. Until one day you do. But here's the part people forget. Just as harm builds slowly, so does healing. And it begins the moment you stop ignoring yourself. You don't need a dramatic change. You don't need to throw away your pantry or start running marathons. You just need to notice. To pause. To listen when your hand feels off, when your thoughts feel thick, when your sleep feels strange. Because your body is trying. Always. It's been compensating, adjusting, working around the problem for years. It hasn't given up on you. Even if you gave up paying attention to it. And that's grace. I knew a man who had 3 TIAs small strokes. Before he ever came in. He was tired. Foggy. He called it aging. But one day, he caught his reflection in the mirror, and something felt wrong. He couldn't name it, just a tilt in his smile, a drag in his blink. That was enough. He came in. We caught it early. He changed how he lived, slowly, not perfectly, but with intention. 10 years later, he's still here. Still walking his dog. Still calling his grandkids. Every Sunday, not because he overhauled everything, but because he noticed. Before it was too late. And that's the secret most people don't realize. Awareness is medicine. So is rest. So is asking for help. So is saying, this doesn't feel right. Every time you choose presence over autopilot, you tilt the scales back in your favor. It won't undo everything, but it might slow the clock. It might give you more mornings, more words, more chances to laugh, to hold, to remember. The signs are there. And if you're watching, you might just catch them, not with panic, but with care. Because real strength isn't charging ahead through warning signs. It's having the courage to stop, look inward, and gently say, not this time. You're sitting here now, breathing, listening, feeling something. Maybe fear, maybe recognition, maybe just quiet. And that's enough. Because change doesn't begin in hospitals. It begins here. In small moments of honesty, when you finally admit to yourself, something hasn't felt right. That's not weakness, that's awareness. And awareness is where healing begins, not because someone told you to change. Not because of guilt, but because deep down you want to stay. Not just alive, but present, for the mornings. For the walks that don't leave you dizzy. For the names you still remember. For the hands you still want to hold steady. You see, the truth about stroke, about blood pressure, about silent damage, is that it doesn't always win by force. It wins when you stop noticing, when you get too busy, too proud, too tired to care. But today, you noticed. And that's something, because no one can live your life for you. No one knows your body like you do. And no one can choose to listen for you. So listen to the way your arm feels when you write, to the pace of your thoughts, to the mirror when your face feels off, to the breath that comes harder than it used to. Not with fear, but with kindness, with patience, with quiet love. You don't need to rush. You just need to begin, not perfectly. Just gently, drink more water, ask one more question. Make one more appointment. Tell one person how you've been feeling for real. That's enough for today. And if you ever doubt that any of this matters, let me say this clearly. You still have time. Time to change direction. Time to soften. Time to stay. Not because you're afraid to die, but because you're ready to live fully awake. If this spoke to you, pass it on to someone still living too fast. They might be waiting for a whisper, just like you were.